Hello, I'm the new maid. Welcome. I'm glad you're here.
I need you to
Thank you, ma'am.
picture something before I start. Picture a woman in a wheelchair, floor to ceiling window, hands folded in her lap, completely still. Outside, a woman is walking through her gate carrying shopping bags, perfume, wine, silk, all paid for with a card that has her name on it. Inside, a man is moving through her halls, sleeping in her bed, spending her money, dismantling her life piece by piece. And the woman in the wheelchair is watching every single second of it. She cannot walk, they say. She is broken, he told the people who love her. He was wrong about all of it. My name is Tina Ademi. I built this house from the ground up. I designed every room, chose every lock, wired every wall. And not one person inside it had any idea they were already caught. Before I tell you what I did, I need you to understand who I was before Franklin walked into my life. Because this story only makes sense if you understand one thing first. I was not a woman who missed things. I was a woman who, just once, chose not to look. I built Ademi Logistics at 28 with one van, one driver, and a contact list I had spent 3 years earning. By 34, I owned 4 properties, and my name carried weight in rooms I had not yet entered. I was also, quietly, the loneliest person I knew. Not visibly, I attended every event, closed every deal, answered every call with the kind of steady competence that makes people assume you are fine. I had made being fine into a professional skill, and I had done it so well for so long that I had almost forgotten what it felt like to simply be seen. Then I met Franklin. He was not the loudest man at the wedding where we met. He was the most present. He found me in the corner where I always retreated from small talk and said without any preamble whatsoever, "You look like someone who has been answering the same 3 questions all evening." I laughed, genuinely, which was not something I did easily with strangers. He brought me food on a random Tuesday because I had mentioned once that I never remembered to eat lunch. He remembered my father's name. He followed up 2 weeks later on a foundation idea I had mentioned once in passing. I want to be honest about who Franklin was in the beginning. He was not a stranger performing kindness. He was a genuinely perceptive man who looked at me and saw something real. He just saw my account slightly more clearly than he saw me. And that difference, which felt like nothing at the time, was everything. 8 months in, I discovered I was pregnant. I remember sitting with that test in my hands for a long time. Not from shock, but from something that felt like the world rearranging itself into a shape I had stopped hoping for. I had wanted to be a mother for years, not loudly, not in the way I wanted my company or my properties. Deeper than that, the way you want things you are afraid to say out loud in case wanting them too much keeps them away. Franklin held my face in both hands and said, "This is the best thing that has ever happened to me," before he had time to calculate whether it was the right thing to say. I believed him completely. He proposed at a rooftop dinner that same week. I said yes with my hand on my stomach, and I was, for the first time in years, simply, completely happy. Then came the signs I explained away. An unauthorized transfer. A mistake, he said. A bathroom phone. He was private, always had been. A name, Simone. His ex, the chapter that had been closed for years. I confronted him once. He took my hands and looked at me with perfectly calibrated, wrongly accused pain. "Tina, you are the only woman I have ever chosen completely. Please don't do this to us." I believed him. Then I found the receipt. A lawyer, retained the same week we returned from our honeymoon. I held that paper for a long time. Then I put it back because I was 4 months pregnant and carrying something I had waited years for. and I was not ready to let the truth collapse the only version of my life that finally felt like enough. I have forgiven that woman. It took a while, but I have. I came home 2 days early from Abuja. I did not call ahead. I climbed the stairs of my own house and heard his voice before I reached the landing. Easy, laughing, relaxed in the way Franklin only ever was when he believed no one who mattered was listening. Then I heard my account number read aloud, casually, like a grocery list. 14 digits representing 11 years of my life, given to a woman on the phone like they already belonged to her. Then I heard her name, Simone. I stood outside that door with one hand pressed flat against my stomach, against my child, against everything I thought we were building, and I made a decision in 30 seconds that would cost me 4 months of my life and give me back everything else. I did not go in. There is a version of this story where I open that door, where I scream and break things and the truth comes out loud and immediate. I used to think that version was braver. Now I know it was just louder. Loud was not going to protect me. Loud was not going to protect what I had built, or the child I was carrying, or the years I would need to survive what came next. I needed something Franklin had never seen from me. I needed to disappear. 2 weeks later, I staged the fall. The doctor I had known for 11 years delivered the diagnosis without a tremor. Spinal trauma, complete loss of lower mobility, wheelchair-bound indefinitely. Franklin wept in the hospital corridor, the right amount at the right moment. I lay in that bed and noted, the way I always noted things, that his grief had perfect timing. Real grief never has perfect timing. 6 days after the accident, I lost the baby. I need you to stay here with me for a moment. I am not going to move past this because the story has somewhere to go. I want you to understand what it actually was. Not a plot point, not the thing that hardened Tina and turned grief into strategy. First, it was just loss. Total, physical, wordless loss. I lay in that hospital bed and I was not a strategist. I was just a mother who had lost a child she had spent years wanting, in a marriage that had never been real, in a body that had been asked to carry more than it could hold. Franklin sat beside me through all of it. He rubbed my back, he prayed, he said all the right things with all the right timing. And the night after I lost the baby, I heard him through the corridor wall. Is she going to be difficult about the accounts now? No, she's broken. She won't be difficult about anything. I lay completely still. The grief did not leave, but something settled inside it. A flaw formed underneath the falling. I reached for my phone. I opened the camera application. I checked all 14 feeds. Franklin was in the kitchen pouring himself a drink, completely unbothered. Simone was in my living room, walking around in her socks on my floor, looking at my walls like she was already measuring for curtains. I watched her for a long time. Then I opened a new document and typed 2 words. Day 1. Franklin moved fast. That speed told me everything about how long he had been waiting. Simone arrived within 2 weeks. Franklin introduced her to my Auntie Bose as our housekeeper. She has been such a support through all of this. Auntie Bose took her hand and thanked her for taking care of the family. I sat 3 meters away in my wheelchair and did not move a muscle. But that was not the worst of it. Later that same afternoon, Simone walked past me in my own hallway without a glance, not around me, past me. The deliberate, practiced invisibility of a woman who has decided that the person in the chair is already gone. She walked past me the way you walk past furniture you have already decided to replace. It was not an accident. It was a position. I added her to the document. Within the month, Franklin contacted the company. He reached Danny, my operations manager, 12 years, the most quietly loyal person I have ever employed, and explained that I had authorized him to manage business affairs temporarily. He asked for full account access. Danny told him he would need written authorization from me directly. Franklin said I was not really able to manage correspondence right now. Danny ended the call. 4 minutes later, a voice note arrived on the number Franklin didn't know existed. Madam, he came for the accounts. I told him no. I will keep telling him no. Tell me what you need. In 4 months of watching people reveal exactly who they were, Danny reminded me that some people simply are what they appear to be. I gave him a 30% raise the week after everything was over. It was not enough. Franklin moved me to the East Wing. More accessible, he said. He installed a bolt on the outside of the door himself. I heard the drill. When he finished, he came in and asked if I needed anything before bed. I said no thank you. I smiled, the way a broken woman smiles. He closed the door. I heard the bolt slide home from the outside. My husband locked me in a room in my own house, then went downstairs to have dinner with another woman at my table. Simone redecorated. She removed my photographs. She replaced my deep red curtains with white linen. She rearranged my life like it had already changed ownership. By week 8, the document was 71 pages. Then one night, through the monitor, I heard a voice I didn't recognize asking Franklin about the power of attorney. Franklin. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Once it goes through, everything transfers to me and there is nothing she can do about it. I closed the laptop. I picked up my phone. It was time. My mother arrived on a Thursday with pepper soup and the expression she reserves for things she does not yet understand but already deeply fears. Franklin took her to the kitchen first. I turned the monitor volume up. He used the words cognitive impact. He said the grief of losing the baby had affected her processing in ways doctors are still assessing. He suggested she avoid stressful topics. He said it all with such specific, knowledgeable concern that I heard my mother say God quietly, in the particular way she says it when something has badly frightened her. He made that sound come out of my mother's mouth with lies, while I sat 12 meters away, completely intact, listening through a monitor. She came into the East Wing and took my face in both hands, the way she has done since I was a child, when something needed to be looked at directly. And she said, "My daughter, where did you go?" I looked at her face, the fear, the grief settling around her eyes, the love that had never once been conditional. I said nothing. I have been asked many times what the hardest moment was. The bolt, the baby, the hospital wall. It was none of those things. It was this. My mother's hands on my face, her asking where I had gone, and me sitting there knowing exactly where I was, unable to tell her. I had made a calculation. I needed her reaction at the reveal to be real and uncoached. That calculation was correct. I stand by it. It was also the most painful thing I have ever done. Both of those things are entirely true. That night, I sat alone in the dark East Wing and let everything be exactly as heavy as it was. The baby, the months, my mother's face. The marriage I had believed in and lost before I ever understood it was never real. I cried for perhaps an hour. Not quietly, not managed, the full physical grief of a woman who has been holding everything together by sheer will and has finally, in the dark, allowed herself to fall apart completely. Then I washed my face. I called Grace. She answered on the second ring. "I'm ready," I said. "However you need me, whenever you say." "Adaze has been ready for 6 weeks," she said. "Danny has everything prepared. Uncle Raymond confirmed yesterday. We are all waiting, Tina, just for you." "Then let's end this." Let's end this. I slept better that night than I had in 4 months. Not because the pain was gone, because it had finally found somewhere to go. I asked Franklin for a party. I want you to appreciate the specific audacity of that sentence. 4 months into sitting in a wheelchair in a locked room in my own home, I looked up at him one morning with the carefully practiced expression of a woman who had finally, quietly, accepted her circumstances, and I asked him if we could host a small gathering. A milestone, I said. I was learning to accept my situation. I wanted to thank the people who had supported us. I watched his face do the micro-calculation dressed as warmth. He decided it served him. A room full of witnesses to his devoted husband performance. Of course, my love, whatever gives you comfort. He was already planning his expression for the evening before he finished the sentence. I gave him the guest list personally. My mother, Auntie Bose, my cousin Dari, who stood at my wedding reception and told Grace quietly that something was priced wrong about Franklin and has never once pretended he didn't say it. My board member Patricia, who had sent 2 careful emails during 4 months that meant only one thing. Are you actually all right? And Uncle Raymond, retired magistrate, 23 years on the bench, a man who knows exactly what guilt looks like when it is dressed in a good suit. Franklin added his own circle. 31 confirmed. He had no idea he was assembling his own audience. Every screen in this mansion runs through one central media system. The access code is the one I set in 2019 when I personally oversaw the construction of this building. I never changed it. I never needed it. Danny's final voice note arrived at 11 p.m. the night before. Everything is ready, madam. Every screen, every feed. You give me the word, and it all plays. Adaze, my lawyer, RSVP'd as Grace's +1. Franklin welcomed her at the door with a handshake and his warmest smile. She told me afterward it was the most expensive crime scene she had ever been invited to as a guest. I told her to send me the bill anyway. The night before the party, I sat alone in the east wing for the last time. I looked at the bolt on the outside of the door, the monitor on the bedside table, the grey light through the window of a room that had been my prison and was about to become simply a room again. Tomorrow, I thought. Tomorrow this ends. And somewhere downstairs, completely unbothered, Franklin was on the phone making plans for a future that by this time tomorrow night would no longer exist. I slept very well. The mansion was full and warm and beautiful, and every person standing inside it had been placed there by me. Franklin moved through the rooms like a man who had already won, touching my shoulder every time he passed, performing devotion for the largest audience he had ever had. He was, I will say this plainly, magnificent. 4 months of practice had made him nearly perfect. Nearly. Simone circulated as house manager, refilling glasses, accepting compliments on the decor, walking past my wheelchair twice during the evening without a glance. Even now, even in front of guests, the erasure had become so automatic she could not turn it off. My mother held my hand. There watched Franklin from across the room with the quiet certainty of a man who called it years ago. Patricia caught my eye once and gave me a nod so small, no one else would have seen it. I see you. I have always seen you. At 8:45 p.m., I asked for the room's attention. Franklin moved immediately to stand beside me. His hand found my shoulder. His expression arranged itself into something soft and proud, the devoted husband, positioning himself inside the story one final time. I let him stand there. I want to thank you all for coming. I asked Franklin to make sure the people who matter most were here, because I have something to say that I need all of you to hear directly from me. For the past 4 months, I have sat in this chair and been described as fragile, confused, cognitively impaired. I have been locked in a room in this house. I have eaten alone behind a bolted door. I have had my accounts stripped, my professional relationships managed without my consent, and my home redecorated by a woman my husband introduced to my family as our housekeeper. I want to be very clear about one thing before I continue. I am not fragile. I have never been fragile, and I have not at any point in the past 4 months been unable to walk. I gripped the armrests. I stood up.
No one moved. Not a single person in that room breathed. 31 people, full glasses, music that had been playing softly all evening, and in the space of 3 seconds, every sound in that house disappeared, as though the house itself had stopped to watch. Franklin's hand, The hand that had been resting on my shoulder, performing devotion for the last time, slid off and fell to his side. I removed my glasses, my eyes clear, steady, seeing everything. I looked at his face and I held it, and I watched the exact moment Franklin Osei understood that the woman he had locked in the East Wing, the woman he had called broken, the woman he had written off and planned around and erased, had been watching him the entire time. The silence lasted perhaps 5 seconds. It felt like the end of something. It was. I am not paralyzed. I staged every part of what you have witnessed because I needed to see, completely and without any possibility of doubt, what the man I married would do when he believed I could not stop him. I would like to show you what he did. I raised the remote. Every screen in the mansion ignited simultaneously. Franklin at my desk, my account numbers read to Simone like a shopping list. Franklin sliding the East Wing boat closed, unhurried, routine, the movement of a man who has decided this is simply how things are now. Franklin in the kitchen, she's broken, she won't be difficult about anything. Franklin receiving guests in my living room on the same night my mother sat 12 meters away asking where I had gone. And then Franklin stood up. That is not what happened. The room turned to look at him. He straightened his jacket. He found his voice, smooth, controlled, the voice of a man who had rehearsed for exactly this possibility. This footage has been edited. She has been planning this for months. You can all see she's not actually... I pressed the remote again. A new clip. Franklin's own voice filling every speaker in the room. The accounts are accessible. I have everything I need. She has no idea. Silence. That is out of context, he said, quieter now. That was a business call. It has nothing to do with... I pressed it again. Franklin at my desk, my company letterhead visible behind him, Simone beside him, his own handwriting on the power of attorney documents, forged, dated, witnessed by no one. That document was... He stopped, swallowed. Tina, if you would just let me explain... I pressed it one final time. Franklin, in the hospital corridor, 2 weeks after I lost our child. His voice, calm, setting, completely unbothered, filling every corner of the room. The baby's gone. It actually simplifies things considerably. The room. Franklin opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked around at 31 faces, his friends, my family, people who had believed every word he said for months. And for the first time since I had known him, Franklin Osei had nothing prepared, no timing, no calibration, no performance left. Just a man standing in the wreckage of his own voice. My mother made a sound I will never forget. Not a word, not a cry, something from below language. The sound of a woman understanding, all at once, everything she had been made to believe and everything that had actually been true. Darry closed his eyes. His jaw tightened. When he opened them, he looked not at the screen, but directly at Franklin. The specific, terrible stillness of a man who called it a wedding and spent years wishing he had been wrong. He had not been wrong. Patricia set her glass down, slowly, finally. The precise movement of a woman making a permanent decision she will not revisit. Uncle Raymond looked at Franklin for exactly as long as he needed to. Then he looked at Adazi. She gave him a small nod. He returned it. A complete conversation between two people who have spent careers in rooms where truth finally, irrevocably lands on the record. And then Simone, who had not looked at me once all evening, looked up from the floor. Not at the screens, not at the guests, directly at Franklin. And in a voice stripped of everything she had been performing for months, she said, "You told me she knew. You told me she had agreed to all of it." Franklin turned to her. "Simone," she said, "you said the marriage was already over. You said she knew." The room watched Franklin's face in the silence that followed and saw, for the first and only time, a man with nowhere left to stand. Adazi stepped forward. The envelope placed in Franklin's hands, without ceremony, without drama, without a single unnecessary word.
Divorce petition, fraud charges, unauthorized account access, restraining order effective immediately, criminal proceedings already initiated. I looked at Franklin for the last time. You chose me because of what I built. You stayed because of what I owned. You locked me in a room in my own house, brought her here, told my mother I was losing my mind, and described the death of our child as a simplification. You tried to deny it in front of every person in this room, and every time you opened your mouth, I had another clip. You had 4 months, Franklin. I had everything. This is my house. These are my walls. Every wire in this building runs back to me. Get out.
I turned. I walked to the door. Behind me, in a room of 31 people, there was complete silence. And then Franklin said my name. Once. Just my name. No performance attached, no calculation, no perfectly timed emotion. Just my name in a voice I had never once heard from him before. The voice of a man who finally, too late, understands what he had in his hands and what he has just watched walk out the door. I did not turn around. I have heard my name in his voice 1,000 times across 4 years. Tender, distracted, performative, strategic, every variation a man uses when he is managing you rather than loving you. That was the last time, and the only time it ever sounded real. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. The prenuptial agreement held completely. Franklin left with a suitcase and the suit he wore to the party. The fraud charges followed him out the door, and Adeaze pursued them without mercy and without haste. Simone was gone within 48 hours. The grey prints came down. The white linen curtains came down. I repainted the sitting room deep green, the color I had originally chosen before Franklin told me neutral tones were more sophisticated. I have never used the word neutral again without noticing it. The east wing bolt came off. I had the entire door frame removed and the room repainted and given good light and plants on the windowsill. I walked through it every day until it was just a room again. It took 3 weeks. Then one morning, I walked through it without thinking about it at all. That was when I knew. Danny got his promotion, his raise, and a handwritten letter he keeps folded in his wallet. I found out about the wallet month later and said nothing. Some things do not need to be spoken to be understood. Patricia's email arrived the morning after. No subject line. 4 words. I always knew. Good. I wrote back too. I know. Derek called and did not say I told you because that was never who he was. He said, "Are you all right?" I said, "I will be." He said, "That's enough. That's exactly enough." My mother came that morning. She made tea. She held me for a long time and I let her, without managing it, without moving through it efficiently, without calculating when it would be appropriate to stop. It was the first time in years I let someone carry something with me, instead of watching me carry it alone. It was, I think, the actual beginning of my recovery. Not the standing up, not the reveal. That morning, her arms, her tea going cold on the table, the light through a window that now only I could lock. I wrote one post, honest, specific, fully named. It reached 4 million people in 9 days. 9 months later, a man named Emeka sat beside me at a business summit and said, "I read what you wrote. I'm sorry it happened. Not a compliment, not a performance, just the true thing simply said." We talked for 3 hours. He walked me to my car. He asked if he could call me. I said yes. I didn't record anything that evening. For the first time in a long time, I didn't need to. My name is Tina Adiemi. I built this house from nothing. I wired every room. I raised every wall. And when the time came, I stood up in it. I am still here. I am still standing.